From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I am Soini Gray. We begin in Ecuador, where the Minister of the Interior, Cesar Navas, has announced that 9 people linked to the armed group Olivier Sinisterra have been arrested in connection with the murder of 2 journalists and their driver last week. Navas said 8 of the 9 detainees are already facing charges and were taken to different prisons around the country. Nonetheless, the Chief of Police, Ramiro Mantilla, added that they are still seeking the leader of the organization known as Windrush. During the press conference, the authorities faced criticism from the journalists' colleagues who said the government did not do enough to save them.
Se detuvieron a 9 personas.
9 people have been detained for the investigation of the killing of our 3 journalists. Of these, 8 people face charges. We have also ordered resumption of military operations in the border area, which were suspended during the time our journalists were kidnapped.
On Friday, President Lenin Moreno announced he was sending tanks and helicopters towards the border area of Mataje on Saturday. Later this Monday, Ecuador's security ministers are due to meet their Colombian counterparts in Quito. And leaders of the FARC political party in Colombia have condemned the murder of the 3 Ecuadorian journalists. Pablo Catatumbo told Ecuador's El Comercio, the paper the 3 men worked for, that the killing was barbaric, referring directly to the supposed FARC dissident Walter Arrizala, also known as Waucho. On Friday, the top leader of FARC, Rodrigo Londoño, also condemned the killings and sent his condolences to the family. The Colombian president, Juan Manuel Santos, has confirmed that the bodies of the 2 journalists and their driver are in Colombia. Although it's not yet known where exactly they are, the authorities from both countries are working with the Red Cross and other international organizations to recover the bodies.
The defense minister, before traveling here to Medellin, told me that through intelligence sources it was confirmed that the bodies were on the Colombian side. That's what the defense minister told me, and in that sense one has to suppose that they were killed in Colombia.
And Pope Francis sent his condolences to the people of Ecuador during Sunday Mass in the Vatican.
With sorrow, I received the news of the killing of the 3 men kidnapped at the end of March on the border between Ecuador and Colombia. I pray for them and their families. I am close to the dear Ecuadorian people, encouraging them to go on united and peaceful with the help of the Lord and His Holy Mother.
A journalist was also reported kidnapped and murdered in El Salvador. Relatives of 33-year-old journalist Carla Lisette Tercios had reported her missing around Saturday. Her body was found several hours later on a road about 130 kilometers northwest of the capital, San Salvador. The newspaper La Prensa Gráfica, where she worked, has condemned the killing. In Paraguay, presidential candidates Mario Abdo Benitez and Efraín Alegre presented their government proposals during the only debate before the election on April 22nd. The debate focused on economic development, education, health, and the environment. This is the 7th general election since the 1989 coup d'etat that overthrew President Alvaro Stroessner. The newly elected president will take office on August 15th and will exceed President Horacio Curtis. Now, a week ahead of the presidential elections, teachers and students in Paraguay are demanding greater investment in education.
Union leaders in the education sector say that Paraguay needs public policies that improve access to education, as well as working conditions and training for teachers.
We are going to defend public policies to reform the education system in order to guarantee investment and the right to get access to good quality public education.
Paraguay invests about 3.7% of its GDP in education, a low contribution for most of the population, who estimate that this will become a big challenge for the new government after the presidential elections on April 22nd.
We need more education investment to reach at least 7% of our gross domestic product, since we are only investing nearly 4%. This will be the first big challenge for the new government.
Official reports have revealed that in 2018, only 6 out of 10 students who are part of the current education system goes on to complete high school. The National Student Federation says this reality is part of the lack of infrastructure and the need for an education law reform.
Our school facilities are in bad condition. The ceilings are falling apart. We have no books or educational materials. We have no chairs. The education system in Paraguay is awful. It is one of the worst compared to other countries. We are demanding educational reform where student organizations are included.
5 years of the Horacio Cartes administration were marked by successive protests with students and teacher strikes. They've pledged to continue to take action during the next presidential administration as well, as they continue to fight for a quality education that will assure them a better future.
In an apparent U-turn, the British Prime Minister Teresa May has agreed to meet the leaders of 12 Caribbean countries over the mistreatment of migrants who came to the United Kingdom from the Caribbean in the 1950s and 60s. The Prime Minister has been meeting youth from the Caribbean and other former colonies ahead of the Commonwealth Leaders Summit on Friday and Thursday. Last week, the Prime Minister's office refused a formal diplomatic request for the meeting with Caribbean leaders about the so-called Windrush generation of migrants. Britain's immigration minister has admitted that some of these immigrants have been wrongfully deported and promised to address the situation. The Windrush immigrants were brought to Britain to run essential services like health and transport in the post-war period. Many of their children are facing severe problems with their legal status, as they were never naturalized and do not hold British passports. A number of them have been classified as illegal and have been denied access to health services and jobs and threatened with deportation. Voters in Guatemala said yes to a referendum on how to resolve a 150-year-old territorial dispute with neighboring Belize. The popular consultation was held on Sunday. Voters were called to decide whether or not they agreed to bring the dispute before the International Court of Justice. In 1992, Guatemala recognized Belize's independence, but borders were not clearly defined because Guatemala claims several islands and maritime territories, which amount to 12,000 square kilometers. Belize claims half is theirs, and the country is also expected to hold its own referendum, but the date has yet to be set.
It's good for Guatemala and Belize to resolve the issue so that the unnecessary disputes don't continue, so that Guatemala and everyone can be at peace.
Guatemala's popular consultation was marked by low voter participation. The low influx of people was evident throughout many polling stations.
I'm seeing people turned off here. No one, as far as I've seen, felt like going to vote. But as a citizen, I think it is good that we do vote, whether it be yes or no.
For some people who went to vote, the purpose of the referendum was not really clear, and some even believed the consultation was for Belize to become a Guatemalan territory.
We need to recover part of Belize, and that's why I came.
We have to fight because it is a territory of Guatemala, and that serves us, the sea and other things.
The territorial dispute between Guatemala and Belize is based on the delimited border between the two countries, just a strip called Adjacency Zone. Both nations agreed in 2008 to carry out their respective consultations with their citizens so that the International Court of Justice could delimit the border. However, several analysts agree that this point was not well explained to voters, hence the confusion.
There is lack of information because the government has not adequately informed the population on what is going on. There is no information about this subject that truly contributes to the Guatemalan citizen with regards to the situation. We should have clear information regarding the rights of Guatemala as far as Belize is concerned.
The origins of this litigation dates back to colonial times when Spain ceded part of Belizean territory to England. Now Guatemala will have to wait for Belize to hold its popular consultation so they can determine the actions to be taken regarding the delimitation of a border and the claim on access to the sea and some islets.
We take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
أولياء الله ووفقهم ومكنهم لتحقيق غايتهم.
Welcome back. Cuba's new National Assembly of Popular Power is to convene for the first time this Wednesday, a day earlier than planned. The meeting is of great importance for the Cuban Revolution, as it will elect a new leadership for the Parliament and the Council of State. This, in turn, will choose a new president, as Raul Castro is stepping down. This year, the Summit of the Americas once again failed in its attempt to impose a U.S. agenda in Latin America and the Caribbean. While in 2005, it couldn't establish the free trade area of the Americas, or the FTA, this time it gained little support in its attempt to isolate Venezuela.
The few governments that attended the Summit of the Americas couldn't get the required consensus to impose the Lima Group's agenda, aimed at isolating Venezuela. During the summit, the only thing they could agree on was to take action against corruption. President of Peru, Martín Vizcarra, dismissed the absence of U.S. President Donald Trump.
What better support can we have than that of U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, and the President's daughter, Ivanka Trump, is also part of the U.S. retinue. She's been actively participating in different summit meetings.
One of the Lima Group's main objectives was to impose new sanctions against Venezuela, something that Mike Pence insisted on. The government of Cuba responded by saying that the United States has no moral authority to question other countries.
Nuestra América, martiana y bolivariana.
Our Bolivarian America continues to be pillaged by the imperialist government of the United States. It invokes the Monroe Doctrine to exert domination and hegemony over our people. It's a story of conquest and war, stripping territories, invading sovereign lands, and imposing military occupations.
Una historia de guerras de conquista, despojo de territorios, invasiones y ocupaciones militares.
The goals of both the Lima Group and the General Secretary of the OAS were rejected by civil society. The Summit of the People, an alternative to the Summit of the Americas, ended with a manifesto in support of revolutionary actions.
We can't
decouple the Peruvian fight from the continental fight. One example for us is the solidarity of the Bolivarian Revolution, which has bravely taken on the empire's aggression. Another is the Cuban Revolution, which has resisted for so long. Many others are standing against imperial aggressions, which have become more criminal and more warmongering than ever.
Demands from citizens were completely missing from the official summit, but they could be found at the Summit of the People, where participants agreed on the need to continue the fight for workers' rights and against neoliberalism, austerity in social investments, privatization, and free trade.
A new poll coming out of Brazil shows former President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva is still the clear favorite ahead of October's presidential election, although he has slipped somewhat after his imprisonment. In the first Datafolha survey since Lula started serving his prison sentence, he has dropped to a 31% approval rating, down from 37% in January. The poll said the far-right candidate Jair Bolsonaro has slipped as well to 15%, and is followed by the environmentalist Marina Silva in third place on 10%. The Brazilian Institute of Public Opinion and Statistics, IBOPE, is one of the largest research companies in Latin America, and it has decided to keep former Brazilian President Lula da Silva on its 2018 presidential opinion polls until August. All presidential hopefuls are required to register in August to run as candidates in the October elections. Meanwhile, Lula's supporters continue to camp outside the police headquarters in Curitiba as protests continue in Brasilia, which is where our Adriana Rebraño reports.
Hola, saludos. En Curitiba.
The Free Lula campsite is still in Curitiba. Several political and cultural personalities have visited the camp. For example, this morning the legislator Maria del Rosario was in Curitiba outside the federal police headquarters. This has become a space to talk about the situation in Brazil. Here in Brasilia, the country's capital, there is another camp similar to the one in Curitiba. People are arriving from several states and it is expected to get bigger over the weekend. The goal of the camp is to pressure the Supreme Court to review Lula's case. There will be more politicians arriving to the camp. Members of the movement of landless workers and other social groups have told us that they will not leave. The camp was intended to settle near the court, but the police have prevented, so they will remain here to fight for Lula's freedom and for democracy in Brazil.
We thank Adriana for that report. This week, Lula's legal team will go to the UN to object to Lula's prosecution. Lawyers on Friday also submitted a new motion in the federal Supreme Court to demand his immediate release. They also want the Porto Alegre Appeals Court to reconsider its decision to make Lula serve his prison sentence early, before his defense team had exhausted all of its appeals. FARC political party member Jesus Santrich, who was illegally detained for drug trafficking according to his supporters in Colombia, has said that he is innocent. Members of the FARC visited Santrich at the Attorney General's office in Bogota, where he is being held. The FARC leader Pablo Catatumbo said Santrich, who is 51 years old and blind, was in a good state. Catatumbo also asked for a fair trial and added that the prosecution has not proved that Santrich was involved in drug trafficking after the peace agreement was signed, as the authorities allege.
We found Santrich in the same way we have always seen him, in a good spirit, in a good state, and still very determined. He is convinced of his innocence and is sure that we will overcome this struggle, that he will eventually be able to prove his innocence.
Residents in northern El Salvador are working to create a university in the region. They're asking Congress to approve a law that will grant funding and enable the university to be constructed.
For 10 years, people from the north of El Salvador have been working to build a national university for the rural population. They've gathered signatures and pitched a request for funding to the Legislative Assembly.
As young people, we need to organize to get what we need. Our goal is to build a public national university, totally free of charge for students, that benefits mainly rural families and young people looking for higher education.
The university will be named after Father Rutilio Grande, a parish priest known for his struggle for poor people. He was killed in 1977 by death squads linked to the National Guard. Supporters of the project believe that the connection to Rutilio Grande might be hampering the approval of the law that will enable the university.
The name is the main obstacle. People from FLN say that the cost is a problem, but why not invest in an institute to form professionals instead of outlaws? Actually, the first department we want to establish is a school of agronomy.
Supporters went to the Salvadorian Parliament to ask for approval before the legislature ended its session.
Education is very important for people, and even more so in areas like this, where opportunities are limited. We have been working for this for more than 10 years, and we support it because it will benefit the citizens of this region.
El Salvador has big problems with violence, mostly caused by gangs, and it's often young people who suffer. Building this university will open new doors for the young people of the northern region and give them more options in life.
We take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Thousands of people in the Syrian capital of Damascus have marched in support of government forces and President Bashar al-Assad following Saturday's missile strikes by Western countries. Huge crowds gathered around Umayyad Square playing music and dancing. It looked like a mass picnic scene with jubilant residents waving Syrian flags. They praised the government for successfully confronting the Western forces. They also held posters saying, "We salute the army's heroism." And President Bashar al-Assad has told a group of Russian lawmakers in Damascus that Saturday's US-led attack was an act of aggression and a failure. The president was reportedly in a good mood and continued his work unaffected in the Syrian capital. Assad in particular praised the Soviet-era air defense systems, which Syria says it used to shoot down or drive out the 103 missiles fired by the US and its allies, Britain and France. Meanwhile, the Syrian government is continuing to honor its commitment to help international chemical weapons watchdog, the OPCW, carry out an investigation into the alleged chemical incident in Douma, which provoked the Western powers to attack the country. Syria's Deputy Foreign Minister Faisal Mekad met with the OPCW inspectors at the Four Seasons Hotel in Damascus ahead of the start of their work. The US and its allies launched their attacks hours before the inspectors arrived on Saturday and before they had a chance to carry out their investigation into the alleged chemical attack. And with the investigation set to get underway, the Syrian army has fully liberated Douma. The area was the last remaining insurgent stronghold in the eastern Ghouta countryside of Damascus. Remaining opposition fighters have now been evacuated along with their families. In Catalonia, thousands of people have taken to the streets in support of independence leader. Our correspondent, Joan Ortiz, was there.
We are here in Barcelona, in the street of Paralelo. The people that are here say that what is happening today will be a clear message to the world, a message of peace, democracy, but also demanding the release of jailed separatist leaders. This is a huge demonstration where hundreds of thousands of people have taken to the streets after a Supreme Court ruling thwarted their latest attempt to elect a regional leader. They're also protesting the situation with regards to Carles Puigdemont, who is currently in the process of being extradited from Germany. He is awaiting authorities to release him or hand him over to the Spanish authorities. Back to you.
Now let's have a look at some of the other stories making headlines around the world.
Asia's two largest economies, China and Japan, have held their first high-level economic talks for the first time in 8 years. Chinese state councillor and foreign minister met with Japanese foreign minister in Tokyo to discuss and improve their bilateral trade relations amid US-provoked trade war. The meeting is also expected to ease tension over China's maritime claims and Japan's wartime legacy. Both sides also emphasized the necessity to pressurize North Korea to abandon its nuclear program.
We have shared understanding that a trade war, no matter which country has brought it about, will have a very large impact on the prosperity of the international economy.
Two members of the minority Christian community in Pakistan have been shot dead and 5 others have been injured in the city of Quetta. 2 gunmen attacked people as they were leaving a church. Islamic State members have claimed the killings. The attack comes just 2 weeks after 4 members of a Christian family were gunned down in the same city. In recent years, the Christian community has been constantly targeted in the country. Former FBI Chief James Comey has called US President Donald Trump morally unfit to be a president in a TV interview ahead of his book release. He also described Trump as a serial liar. Comey's book, A Higher Loyalty, Truth, Lies and Leadership, is due to release on Tuesday. Trump took to Twitter to refute Comey's remarks and also suggested that he should be imprisoned. Comey was fired by Trump last year over FBI investigation into 2016 presidential campaign.
And that report has brought us to the end of this newscast. But for these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Sunny Gray. Thank you so much for watching.
our programming from Monday to Friday, where you'll find the best information on innovation, conservation, human well-being, and human rights. Keep up